Welcome into Fantasy Fix, our fantasy football podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Holt. I'm joined by Darren Hartwell. Darren, happy Halloween.
Oh yeah, you can see we both dressed up to the nines, got our Halloween costumes here. So.
Full disclosure, I do look like I'm dressed as a biker, but...
Yeah, that works.
But that is because I got a flu shot today. They came to work, very nice. Happy Halloween to all of us. And I have a Band-Aid on my arm, so I'm just covering up with my jacket. So I guess we're going for biker chick or just hiding the flu shot, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I skipped the flu shot and went straight to the Halloween party in the break room, got some cheesecake. So yeah, I'm clearly concerned about my health.
It's a big day at Nesson today.
It
Not
is.
only do we have flu shots, but they reward you with cookies and cake, and there was carrots down there, and all kinds of things going on.
You could be as healthy as you wanted to. I chose not to be healthy at all by doing all that, but you know, I'm still alive.
Yeah,
so
you're here.
We're still
you're alive and
kicking.
kicking.
Well.
Okay, well, we're on to week 9 of the fantasy football
Yes.
season, or the NFL regular season, whichever one you prefer, which means week 8 has passed, and so has the first half of the fantasy football season, right? We're on to the second half, pretty much. How did you do in week 8?
Week 8 was again a mixed bag. I actually ended up winning all of my leagues except for our league. So another league not doing too well. Yeah,
Makes
so
2 of us.
So this one there's a bit of an excuse. You had the bye weeks, a lot of bye weeks. For me, Jordy Nelson and Larry Fitzgerald were both on byes. I had to do a little mixing and matching. T.Y. Hilton and Chris Hogan combined for 75 yards. So ours is non-PPR. That's 7.5 points. Not what you're looking for there.
Nope, that won't get it done.
Yeah. Good news for me, LaShawn McCoy, again.
He's been killing it.
He's my guy.
Yep.
The last 2 weeks has done really well, kind of rewarding me for sticking with him. So Marvin Jones.
And that was your advice to people, is to stick with the stars.
Exactly.
Because he was, slow going in the beginning of the season. So.
Unless that star is Jay Ajayi, which we'll talk about later.
Yep.
But and then Marvin Jones also was a pretty good pickup. 6 catches, 128 yards. So that was good. But overall, not a good week in the Nesson Experts Fantasy League.
Yeah, and I just won't even talk about that league anymore if we're being quite honest. I do have LeGarrette Blount in that league, and he's finally doing well for me. He's scored a touchdown this past week. I haven't been playing him. He's been sitting on my bench. I've been waiting for him to get good. Now that he is at that point where I would start him, now we're going to have some issues there because things are changing, which we'll get into. But I just can't catch a break. Like I told you, I've been a really bad coach. If I was a good coach, I would have listened to what you said last week about picking up Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah.
We talked about this guy. We talked about him. He's actually still available on the waiver wire in our Nesson League. So if you haven't already, I'm definitely going there right after we get done. But if you did pick up this guy, if you were listening last week, you can thank Darren because he finished with 193 yards and a touchdown.
Yep.
That's good for 25 points in our Nesson League. So that could have single-handedly won a lot of people this week.
Yeah, just give myself a pat on the back.
I'm doing it for you. Hey.
And he was a guy that did pretty well the week before, so he was kind of on people's radars. But some people weren't really buying in fully. But now with the whole Martavis Bryant situation, he's kind of it seems like he wants out of there. So Smith-Schuster, I guess you could say, is he had that.
Love his name.
He had a great name, great celebrations. He locked up his bike after the touchdown. Nobody's stealing his bike, but you can steal him on the waiver wire if he's still out there. I think you should get him.
The best saga to follow along on Twitter, I think that was last week, right? Early last week. He lost his bike, this poor guy, and it comes to our attention that he doesn't have his license, he doesn't have a car, he needs his bike.
Yeah, he's a young kid.
So he's got all of Pittsburgh looking for his bike, and they did find it. So that was pretty funny to follow along with, but he's my new favorite Twitter follow for sure.
Yeah, and he gets fantasy points. It's a win-win.
Okay, and now we have a lot going on this week because we have to talk NFL trade deadline fallout. Adam Schefter tweeted that a source texted him and said, "This is the most active trade deadline ever," and it seems to be true. I mean, if you're in New England, you were probably hanging out at home last night around 8 p.m., and then all of a sudden we got the news, our Twitter feeds were blowing up. I got a couple texts actually that Jimmy Garoppolo has been traded to the 49ers. Now this is crazy because, Tom Brady's our guy, of course, but Jimmy Garoppolo, he was a solid backup, and he felt confident as a fan in New England that if Brady for some reason couldn't play, if he got injured or if he started waning off in the next couple of years,
Great
you thought
insurance
maybe
policy.
Garoppolo was going to be there, but not the case. So what was your first reaction to that news?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. I was like, what the heck's going on? Why are they trading him now? And I think the biggest thing was trading him for a second-round pick. There was a lot of rumors that in the summer that the Browns are willing to give the Patriots a first-round pick, all this stuff. When you kind of step back and look at it, that second-round pick from the Niners is probably going to be pretty high in the second round. So maybe it makes a little bit more sense. But for the purposes of us, it's one of those for fantasy. It's one of those things where it's a lot more impactful in real life than it is in fantasy. So the obvious question there is, should we pick up Jimmy Garoppolo?
Right, and I know a lot of people, they really did love this guy in New England. I mean,
Yeah.
Bill Belichick had great things to say about him this morning in a conference call. It seemed like they didn't want to get rid of him. He said we probably had the best quarterback situation in the league the last 2.5 years, but it was just not sustainable. I mean,
Right.
It's great to see Jimmy G branching out and being able to play, hopefully, not in the starting role next week, but down the road, who knows? So what do you think? I mean,
Yeah.
do you run to the waiver wire now? Do you pick up Jimmy G, especially if you're a Patriots fan and you want to see this guy do well?
I mean, yeah, I think we all want to see him do well. I think unless you're in kind of a deeper league, 2 QB league, I'm not running out to go get this guy. Look, I think he's gonna come into his own. He's in a good system, but considering where the Niners are right now, they have one of the worst offensive lines in the league. I think they rank, they've allowed the second most sacks this season of all NFL teams. So Garoppolo's going to take his lumps a little bit. This team is 0-8. They haven't generated any offense. They're starting CJ Beathard over him right now for the time being. He'll get his chance. I think it's going to be interesting in 2018 in your fantasy draft. I think he might be kind of a sleeper pick, especially if he struggles a little bit this season. Get a year under his belt, get the offseason. Maybe they go out and revamp the offensive line a little bit. I think he could be solid in 2018, but for now, I'd stay away.
Our producers were talking about it. I think Keely Flanagan was the one that said, hey, sometimes with these teams that are not doing so well, you get that garbage time.
That's true.
Garbage time
Could
points.
be a Blake Bortles situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just saying, if you want to keep that in mind. But no, I think we'll hold off for now, especially me who doesn't need to take any more chances in our fantasy league. Moving on to Jay Ajayi, he was traded to the Eagles. Now, this is the Miami Dolphins running back. He had a fantastic year last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he had 3 games with over 200 yards rushing. He finished with over 1,200 yards rushing, 1,200 rushing yards last season, 8 touchdowns. This year, not the case. He went scoreless through the first 8 games of the season, wasn't getting along well with the coach there. First of all, it's just a really good move for Ajayi.
Yeah, I think it's going to benefit him to get a change of pace, and it's kind of funny. He's going from one of the worst rushing offenses in the NFL to one of the best. So obviously a big jump there. Dolphins were averaging 76 rushing yards a game, second worst in the NFL. And now the Eagles, before he even got there, averaging 129 rushing yards per game. And they also have a great offensive line. Even with Jason Peters out, I think they're a team that can run the ball with success. So I think that's a great move for him. Just to, if he can stay healthy, there are a little bit concerns about his knee, about his durability, but he's going to get a lot more opportunities to succeed. Maybe live up to that reputation. He was a guy who went first or second round in a lot of fantasy drafts. So
yeah.
Maybe now he gets to prove his worth.
I mean, he was a sleeper last year, and if you got him off the waiver wire, you were incredibly
Yes.
happy with him all season. And
Not
this
so much
year,
this
he just
year.
hasn't been performing the way you expected him to. So hopefully, a good change of pace for him.
Yeah.
Now, with the Eagles, I mentioned this guy LeGarrette Blount. I've been waiting on this guy all season long to do something. Now he's finally finding his stride there. He averages about 14 carries a game. What do you think? I mean, how does this addition of Ajayi now shift the offense in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I do not think this is good for LeGarrette Blount. Hate to break it to you. I think, I think he's at this point going to be kind of a touchdown vulture. I think he's going to be the goal line back, kind of similar to what he was in New England. There's actually a tweet
well, that's
from.
fine by me.
Yeah, but I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get there. It's a tweet from Adam Kaplan, who's ESPN, pretty connected NFL circles, he said Blount's inconsistency was part of the reason why the Eagles made this deal. He gets a lot of rushes per game, but he hasn't been able to often do that much, with them. You saw with the Patriots, he's not exactly, going to be juking out a bunch of defenders. He's kind of a plow-ahead runner, and in this Eagles offense, they've been relying a lot on Carson Wentz throwing the ball a lot. So I think now Ajayi, in my opinion, will be the number one back, and Blount will kind of fill in. They're both kind of similar style running, though. Both of them don't really play too much of a factor in the passing game, so I think you're going to see more of Ajayi than you are Blount. So I think Blount's probably not worthy of starting, depending on how deep of a league you're in right now.
Certainly has been an interesting NFL trade deadline, and it's not over yet. So if any news comes in, make sure you keep it on NESN.com. But as far as what's happening right now, we don't know. So stay tuned on that. In other news around the league, Ezekiel Elliott, we've been talking about this guy all season long, waiting for the news about his suspension. Is it happening? Is it not happening? Well, it looks like his suspension is back on. It's worth noting that he does have one more appeal left. So we'll see. I mean, shall the saga continue? We don't know. But it seems like this time it is for real, so he will likely miss the next 6 games. If you do have Elliott, you were expecting this to happen at some point during the season. Probably not ideal timing. You probably wanted to get it away in the beginning of the season, not when playoffs are nearing. But who gets the bulk of his workload now?
Yeah, I think it comes down to probably 2 guys, maybe 3. So Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden are the 2 main guys, and then you have Rod Smith, who's the 3rd string guy with Elliott out until Week 15, which obviously, like you said, is not ideal. That's championship semifinals for a lot of fantasy leagues. It was interesting. Jerry Jones, Cowboys owner, came out on the radio and basically said, "Yeah, I think Alfred Morris is going to get the majority of the touches." Kind of just putting Jason Garrett in a box a little bit, in a little bit of a bind. I think based on that, Morris might be the guy to get a little bit more targets. He is slightly younger than McFadden. And has had some work this season. McFadden hasn't done anything this season. They've kind of been saving him. So I think you're going to see maybe a little bit of a timeshare. We kind of have to wait and see, but I think they should both be owned. You should, if either of them is on your waiver wire, go pick them up. And then Rod Smith, he's kind of the third fiddle there, but Morris and McFadden aren't necessarily slam dunks. So say one or both of them struggles or gets hurt, they throw Rod Smith into the mix, he starts doing well, then I think it's something to keep an eye on.
Okay, well, obviously this changes the dynamics of this Cowboys offense now, as Elliott was such a workhorse for them.
Yeah.
Does this shift maybe how Prescott does and his fantasy implications?
I think so, and I think for now it looks like I think there's going to be a little bit more pressure on him. He's going to get a little bit more volume, maybe, because with Elliott there, they rely on him a lot in the run game. They give him 25, 30 carries a game. That's not going to be the case. I don't think they're going to. They can afford to give that many carries to Morris and McFadden and be as successful. So I think Prescott's at the point now in his NFL career. He has a year and a half under his belt where he can start taking on a little bit more volume. So I think if you own Prescott, this is certainly good news for you.
Let's talk about some injuries. It started off on a bad foot on Thursday. Joe Flacco suffered a nasty hit from Kiki Alonso. This looked really bad if you saw it in real time. His helmet, it moved in a way that I've never seen a helmet move. It's not supposed to.
Bleeding ear there.
Right.
Yeah.
He looked around with this dazed expression after he got up. Coach Harbaugh recently said, I think there's a good chance he'll play on Sunday, which is just
pretty
incredible to me because this seemed like it was going to be a terrible concussion. So if he does play, I'd be surprised, but hey, I'm not Joe Flacco, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but in terms of how he's done this season, he's not exactly been fantasy relevant, and that Baltimore passing attack hasn't been great, but yeah, we want to see him on the field. That was a pretty nasty hit. So the fact that there's a chance he plays this Sunday is a good sign. Okay,
but I would stay away from him in terms of fantasy. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I would say so.
Bears tight end Zach Miller. Now these are the times when you're reminded that football is a game, and more importantly, it's about someone's life. Now he had an emergency surgery to repair an artery in his left leg. There were reports that he was in danger of losing his leg.
Yeah.
It seems like the surgery was successful, so good news on that front. Hope he's okay. You even hate to say, oh, now you're out of tight end. What do you do? Because this is a guy who just has his whole life turned upside down. And obviously, you stop playing football at some point, and you have to worry about your real life. So hope he's doing just fine there. But in terms of tight ends, I mean, you're going to be looking for one.
Yeah, and I think Miller, in that offense, they didn't really pass the ball much either. It's kind of a situation with Flacco. Mitch Trubisky is the quarterback there, and now taking over from Mike Glennon. Miller didn't get a whole lot of targets, but he should have had that touchdown on the play that it happened on. It's kind of crazy that they overruled it, but yeah, that's a tough situation. Kind of reminded me of the Gordon Hayward injury in the NBA. It's one of those where you just cringe and kind of look away. So yeah, I'm glad we don't want to see something like that happen.
Tough stuff. Wishing him a speedy recovery for sure. Now, Chris Hogan, he could miss a few weeks with the shoulder injury. Good news, he doesn't require surgery, but and the Patriots have a bye week this week, so that's also good news if you're looking at it that way.
Yeah, it works out pretty well for them, and it might miss a few weeks, so it's possible that he comes back from the bye and has to miss one or two games. But yeah, this you hate to say injuries come at a good time, but there was a possibility that he might it might be more serious, but he avoided surgery, which is the key thing. So that's good news on that front.
Not only do we have injuries, but we have a few more bye weeks. This is actually a really rough week for bye weeks. It's the last rough one of the season. Now, 6 teams on byes: the Chicago Bears, the Cleveland Browns, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Minnesota Vikings, New England Patriots, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we have a lot of guys to replace on our rosters. Starting out with QBs, Brady, Big Ben, which I got rid of Big Ben. I'm so sick of him.
Finally cut bait.
So hopefully you cut bait as well, because this guy. Rivers, running backs, Le'Veon Bell, Melvin Gordon, Jordan Howard.
That's a tough one.
Yes, very tough there. Wide receivers, also very tough. Antonio Brown, Stephon Diggs, and Brandon Cooks, and tight end Gronk.
Yeah. I mean, there's more. You can probably go down the list, but those are the big guys you have to worry about. But as you mentioned, once you get through this week, then the bye weeks, there's usually, I think, 3 or 4 teams per week or less. So, just get through this week and you'll be okay.
It gets a little easier, but for those people that are looking for some big holes to replace, I mean, who are you looking at on the waiver wire? Let's talk about quarterbacks first.
Here. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So quarterbacks, I like Jared Goff this week. He's coming off the bye. The Rams have been putting up some serious points, and they're playing the Giants this week. So, and Giants have been pretty bad against the pass. Only 3 teams have allowed more passing TDs than the Giants. So, I like Goff. I think he's owned in a little under 50% of leagues, so he's a good pickup.
Okay, running backs.
Yeah, this is something we didn't mention with the Ajayi trade. Who takes over in Miami? So you have Damian Williams and Kenyon Drake are the 2 guys who are probably going to fill in. That said, not to go the other direction, I don't think either of those guys are super viable options. Like we mentioned, the Dolphins' running attack has really struggled, even with Ajayi. So I think Drake's probably going to be the number 1 option and maybe someone to keep an eye on. But for now, I'm looking at Alex Collins on the Ravens. He looks like the number 1 back in Baltimore. He had 113 carries on 113 yards on 18 carries. That would be a lot of carries. So he's, Baltimore likes to run the ball a lot. They can do that pretty effectively. So decent matchup against the Titans next week. Maybe they want to protect Joe Flacco a little bit. I think he gets some work.
And we should mention that it gets harder and harder to pick guys up off the waiver wire at this point in the season, right? Because there's not too many more surprises. You wouldn't think. The injuries, of course, you can't predict those, but we're going to ask you for wide receivers. We're going to ask you to pick those guys who may do well.
Yeah, we mentioned Juju Smith-Schuster. He's out there, go get him. But another big play guy, kind of in that similar vein, I like Paul Richardson on the Seahawks. He's had 3 touchdowns in his last 2 weeks. He's kind of a big play guy for Russell Wilson. So, again, a little bit of a home run, boom or bust type guy, but, he's been more boom right now. So I would, Seahawks are throwing the ball a lot, so I would go get him.
And lastly, if you had Gronk maybe on your team, what about a tight end?
Yeah, I like Jack Doyle. Nice Irishman. I would go out and get him. Big day. 121 yards on 12 catches. That's a receiver number right there. pretty good matchup this coming week against the Texans. 24th in yards allowed to tight ends, so it looks like Jacoby Brissett could be looking his way a lot. So, yeah, I like Doyle.
And let's do a Patriots fantasy check-in now. Yeah. These guys are on a bye this week, so you don't really have to worry about them moving forward. But they beat the Chargers on Sunday, 21-13. No one really wowed. It wasn't their best week overall. I mean, Tom Brady, solid, finished with 333 yards and just one touchdown. So for him, we expect more. Gronk, he did well. 5 catches for 57 yards and a touchdown, so he got you some points. But Brandon Cooks, quiet day on that front.
Yep. Yeah.
Running backs, not too bad.
Yeah, actually, the running backs were kind of a pleasant surprise. Again, very spaced out, but Rex Burkhead and James White, if you're in a PPR or a half PPR league, they both got you over 10 points. White had 85 receiving yards and Burkhead had 68, so that was a good sign to see. But yeah, Brandon Cooks, pretty quiet day. Chris Hogan also quiet day before he got hurt. So you expect a little bit more out of the Patriots. But.
Well, with the trade news coming in, I mean, this team will take this next couple weeks to rebuild and
find a backup quarterback.
Find their backup quarterback,
yeah.
Or else just pray that Tom Brady doesn't get hurt.
The interesting thing about the Patriots and like I mentioned with their running backs, their running backs are almost to the point now where they're kind of eating at the production of the wide receivers. So in this past game, Patriots running backs accounted for 44% of Tom Brady's completions. Wow. So almost half.
Yeah.
You have Burkhead and James White each had 5 receptions. Dion Lewis, I think, had 2. So that's that doesn't happen. But anyways,
maybe that's their strategy. As Tom Brady's not going to throw the ball anymore. He's not going to risk injury. He's just going to hand it off. They're going to run the ball now. So you don't need a backup quarterback.
It's been working, but if you own a guy like Cooks or a guy like Hogan, especially if you're in a PPR league, you're not too happy because they're not going to be catching 8 or 10 balls a game. They're spreading it out between the running backs. So, I think that Cooks is still a viable option. We talk about him a lot. He's going to get the big plays for the Patriots. Hogan, same deal. He always seems to find the end zone. But it's something to watch at least that, Burkhead, White, even Dion Lewis are going to factor a lot into this passing game and maybe vulture some of those touches.
Well, we may not be able to watch the Patriots this week, but we can watch 2 of their AFC East foes go up against each other on Thursday night. The Bills, who are 5-2, take on the Jets, who started off strong but are now 3-5. So as far as players that you like in this matchup, I know your boy LeSean McCoy is playing, and you're going to be starting him for sure. I mean, are you expecting another big night out of him?
Yeah, I don't want to jinx anything, but I'm sticking with McCoy. I think he's going to do well. 159 total yards in the season opener against the Jets, so that was a good sign. Obviously, they're in New York. This game kind of has a weird feel to it. Thursday night football, division game. Who knows what could happen, but the Bills are pretty committed to McCoy right now. They're giving him a ton of touches, getting 20-plus carries in the past 2 weeks. So I'm sticking with him. The only other guy I think I'd start for Buffalo, though, is Tyrod Taylor. That's your guy?
Yeah, it's my guy.
Yeah, I think he's, his ability to run, his ability to throw, he does enough. He'll get you around 15 to 20 fantasy points a game, it seems like.
I need those points. Yeah, he's been pretty consistent ever since I subbed him in for Big Ben, who wasn't consistent. Mm-hmm. I'll never stop saying it. I mean, is there anyone else that you would consider starting?
Yeah,
the
Jets, not too keen on the Jets right now. Like I said, this does feel like a weird game, and I could see, Josh McCown maybe going off. He does have at least 2 touchdown passes in 4 straight games. But the Bills are pretty stout on defense right now. They've been pretty well. That's a big reason why they're 5-2 right now. They've only allowed 6 passing TDs in the entire season in 7 games. So I'm gonna steer clear of McCown, and then obviously I'm not gonna start any of their receivers. Robbie Anderson's doing better, but I think he's kind of boom or bust
play. Too risky at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the running backs, Bilal Powell and Matt Forte. Bills have a pretty good run defense. There's just not enough there for me to warrant a start. If you're in a deeper league, you want to roll the dice. The Jets are at home, but my personal opinion, no Jets. Not flying on the Jets this week.
Okay, well, every week we pick on the Jets and we pick their defense. I mean, whoever they're playing against.
Yeah.
So is this the formula? Do we want Buffalo's defense in this week?
I do think Buffalo's defense is a good play. That's definitely one of the options. They're going to be, they were all over the Raiders last week, so I think they're a pretty solid play. Yeah.
It's still on me. Sorry, everyone just had to stare at me for 3 minutes.
Yeah, for the best.
Just kidding. All right. Well, what other defenses are we looking at?
Yeah, I like two other defenses this week. I like the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're surprisingly the biggest defensive, biggest defense of the year. Like you could argue that when the Jaguars were on a bye, that you shouldn't have dropped them. That you should have kept them on your team just because they're the #1 ranked defense this year. They have a great matchup this week against the Bengals. They've allowed 22 sacks in 7 games. Jaguars are just a sack machine right now, so I would do them. And I think another kind of sneaky play. I think if you monitor the Flacco situation, if he doesn't play, then the Titans defense at home against the Ravens is a good play. If Flacco does play, I like the Eagles. The Eagles are playing the Denver Broncos at home, and the Broncos have been atrocious on offense. They've actually allowed 20-plus fantasy points in 3 straight weeks. So that's not good to opposing defenses. So Eagles defense pretty opportunistic. They had a big week last week, so those are the guys.
Some matchups to keep our eyes on now.
It's all about the matchups.
We always ask you for a bold prediction heading into the next week. Now, last week you predicted a Cam Newton bounce-back game. He did okay. A lot of people are waiting for this bounce-back game, and I know a lot of people want to see it happen. So I didn't mind that.
Yeah, it was okay. It wasn't too great. 154 yards. He did throw a touchdown, and he had some rushing yards. But yeah, I was really going for it. He kind of was somewhere in the middle, but at least he didn't post under 10 points, so he didn't completely flop.
Okay, well, in the spirit of Halloween, if you could look into your magic ball, fortune teller Darren, for Halloween. So what's your prediction for this week?
Yeah, we mentioned this. I like Dak Prescott against the Chiefs. I think he's gonna be scary good against the Chiefs. If you want to go that far, that's not great. But so Kansas City has a pretty bad passing defense, 5th worst passing defense in the NFL. Cowboys, like we mentioned, don't have Ezekiel Elliott in the run game right now, so I think they're gonna have to throw a lot with Prescott. So big day for him. I like him.
Okay,
he's gonna be treat as opposed to trick.
Oh, stop it. Your dad jokes are coming out. You're not even dad yet, so I'm scared to see you in a couple years. Well, that will do it for this week. Like we mentioned, Patriots on a bye, but we will be at Gillette tomorrow, of course, Wednesday. Big news coming out of Gillette this week, so stay tuned for all of that sound and player reaction and what they have to say. And for all your fantasy news, make sure you keep it on NESN.com.